The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead in Murphy's Auto Repair, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal filled the air, mixing with the distant sound of pneumatic tools and muffled conversations from the other bays. It was just after 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, and the garage was bustling with its usual rhythm of productivity. Michael Chen wiped his hands on a blue rag, tucking it into the pocket of his work coveralls. His dark hair was slightly disheveled from a long day under car hoods, but his eyes held their usual warmth and focus. He had been working at the garage for nearly 5 years now, ever since his wife Emma had passed away, leaving him to raise their daughter Sophie on his own. The work was honest and steady, and his boss had been understanding about the times when single parenthood demanded his attention. Today had been particularly busy. A sleek black Lexus sat before him with its hood raised, its engine compartment gleaming under the bright work lights. The customer, Mrs. Rodriguez, needed a complete brake system inspection before her family's road trip to Colorado. Michael took pride in his thoroughness, especially when families were involved. He understood the weight of responsibility that came with keeping loved ones safe on the road. As he leaned over the engine bay, checking fluid levels and examining brake lines, Michael's mind wandered briefly to his evening plans. Sophie had been excited all week about their scheduled trip to the ice cream parlor after his shift ended. It was their Tuesday tradition, a small ritual that had developed naturally in the months following Emma's death. These simple moments, together, had become precious anchors in their new normal. The garage around him continued its steady symphony of work. Tony, the senior mechanic, was explaining something to a younger apprentice to bays over. The hydraulic lift in Bay 3 groaned softly as it raised a pickup truck. Through the large service doors, Michael could see the afternoon sun painting golden rectangles on the floor, a stark contrast to the industrial lighting inside. Michael reached for his inspection checklist, methodically marking off each component he had examined. The brake pads were in good condition, the rotors showed minimal wear, and the fluid levels were perfect. Mrs. Rodriguez would be pleased to know her family's vehicle was road-ready. He made a few notes on his tablet, documenting everything for the service record. A movement in his peripheral vision caught his attention. Through the main entrance of the garage, he saw a small figure in a pink dress making her way between the parked cars and equipment. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized the familiar silhouette and the way the light caught her golden hair. "Dad," the voice rang out across the busy garage, clear and joyful above the mechanical sounds. Sophie was running toward him, her pink dress flowing behind her like a small cloud of cotton candy. Her face was bright with excitement, and her small feet moved quickly across the smooth concrete floor. Michael's first instinct was concern. Sophie should have been at after-school care for another hour. His mind immediately began cycling through possibilities. Had something happened? Was she hurt? Had there been an emergency at the school? But as she drew closer, he could see her expression. Clearly there was no distress in her bright blue eyes, no tears or worry. Instead, she was beaming with the kind of pure joy that only children could radiate so effortlessly. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, and she was practically bouncing as she ran. "Sophie, sweetheart, what are you doing here?" Michael called out, setting down his tools and moving to meet her halfway. His voice carried both surprise and gentle concern. Behind Sophie, appearing more slowly through the garage entrance, came a woman Michael didn't immediately recognize. She was well dressed in a white blouse and skirt, walking carefully in heels that clicked softly on the concrete. She had a warm smile on her face and seemed to be watching the reunion with obvious pleasure. Sophie reached her father and threw her small arms around his legs, hugging him tightly despite the fact that his coveralls were marked with the day's work. Michael immediately crouched down to her level, his large hands gently framing her small face. "What's going on, little one? You're supposed to be at after-school care," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Miss Jennifer brought me," Sophie announced, turning to gesture toward the woman who was now approaching them. "She said she had a surprise." Michael looked up at the woman, confusion evident in his expression. As she drew closer, he began to recognize something familiar about her features, though he couldn't quite place where he might have seen her before. "Mr. Chen?" the woman asked, extending her hand with a professional but warm demeanor. "I'm Jennifer Walsh. I'm Sophie's teacher at Riverside Elementary." Understanding began to dawn on Michael's face. He had heard Sophie mention Ms. Walsh many times over the past few months, always with great enthusiasm. She was Sophie's new teacher this year, and from all accounts, Sophie absolutely adored her. "I hope you don't mind the unexpected visit," Ms. Walsh continued. "I have some rather wonderful news to share," and Sophie was so excited that she insisted we come tell you right away. Michael stood up, keeping one hand protectively on Sophie's shoulder. "Of course, please. What's going on?" Ms. Walsh's smile broadened. "Well, as you know, Sophie has been working incredibly hard on her reading this year. When she started in my class back in September, she was reading at a first-grade level. We've been working together every day, and I've been so impressed with her dedication." Sophie looked up at her father, practically vibrating with contained excitement. Today, Ms. Walsh continued, Sophie completed her reading assessment. Not only has she caught up to grade level, she's actually reading above it. She's made more progress in 6 months than many students make in an entire year. The pride that washed over Michael's face was unmistakable. He looked down at his daughter, who was now grinning so widely it seemed her face might split in half. She wanted to come tell you immediately, Miss Walsh said. She kept saying that her dad needed to know right away because he helped her practice. Every night, Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. Every evening after dinner, he and Sophie would sit together on their small couch, working through her reading homework. There had been moments of frustration, times when Sophie had wanted to give up, nights when Michael had wondered if he was doing enough as a single parent. But they had persevered together. Is this true, Sophie? He asked, crouching down again to meet her eyes. I read the whole chapter book, Dad. The one with the dragon. Miss Walsh said I did perfect. Sophie's words tumbled out in a rush of excitement. Michael pulled his daughter into a tight hug, lifting her slightly off the ground. Around them, the garage continued its steady work, but, in this moment, nothing else seemed to matter. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart, he whispered into her hair. You worked so hard for this. When he set her down and looked back at Ms. Walsh, she was smiling with the satisfaction that came from witnessing a child's success being celebrated. Thank you, Michael said to her, for everything you've done for her, and for bringing her here to share this news. As the three of them stood together in the busy garage, surrounded by the tools and machinery of Michael's daily work, the moment felt perfect in its simplicity. It was a reminder that the most important victories in life often happened quietly, measured not in grand gestures but in the steady accumulation of small efforts and daily love. The black Lexus could wait a few more minutes. This was a moment to savor.